Hi, and welcome to this short discussion for my EDD 9100 leadership seminar of my experience in the EDD 9100S Centerville simulation. I'll divide this discussion into 7 parts, each addressing one of the 7 prescribed points for this assignment, namely number 1, an overview of the political environment of Centerville and of my sector. In my case, this will be the Economic Development Board. A discussion of the difference between management and leadership, along with examples of my assuming roles of manager and leader in Centerville. An explanation of how my sector, the Economic Development Board, initially developed policies and how these policies may have changed. Number 4, examples of the role that data played in my deliberations, as well as the decision-making process for both the Economic Development Board and for the City Council. A discussion of the effectiveness of the communication process on the Economic Development Board and the City Council. Number 6, examples of the role technology played in enhancing and or challenging my leadership style. And finally, number 7, a discussion addressing what I learned about my leadership style as a result of my work in the simulation. Okay, let's begin then. Number 1, the political environment. Since we're all familiar with the Centerville simulation and how it works, I'll skip discussion of all that and just jump right into observations about the environment of my particular Centerville universe, that is this semester's OL4 section. It should be noted right away that the central event of this semester in our universe, which may or may not distinguish aspects of its environment from other Centervilles, was that our simulation underwent a complete reset about exactly halfway through the semester, with all previously entered data needing to be re-entered, but most significantly, with any changes that had taken place as a result of our earlier semester decisions being undone. I can't really say how much effect this had on the overall environment of our Centerville. To me, and probably as part of a knock-on effect to my sector, this didn't seem to be particularly a big deal. Having said that, other sectors may have experienced this differently. Though this, of course, skewed semester-end results significantly, it's still my impression that our city's performance, with reference to its various indicators, was pretty successful. In terms of the overall political environment of the city, I admit that I wasn't fully aware of certain aspects of it until reviewing, only at the end of the term, the discussion boards of other sectors and of those of the city councils in which I wasn't a participant. Though things always went very smoothly during my periods on city council, with my usually playing the role of compromise broker between the sectors. And without ever a hint of dissension or even dissatisfaction, it seems that things didn't always proceed so smoothly in other periods, and especially that our universe's community services sector perceived its relationship with other sectors as adversarial. In terms of my own Economic Development Board, the political environment, such as it was established very early on, with 3 fully participating members and 1 largely absentee member. Especially in the early stages, this made for a great deal of energy being spent on trying to bring the non-participating member into the process, and over the course of the semester, a fair amount of anxiousness about things like city council representation, and especially remaining sensitive, cooperative, fair. Again, this all seemed to work out in the end. Because of my fortunate circumstances of not working a full-time job this semester, I've been able to focus on my studies, and so was able to take something of a lead role on the Economic Development Board, especially in terms of preparation and communication. Okay, that was an especially long discussion of point number 1. I'll try to keep discussions of the remaining 6 a bit shorter. Number 2, leadership and management, or leadership versus management. We all intuitively know the difference between leadership and management, and they obviously do have overlap. But it's easy to fall into the trap of speaking about them synonymously, so it's worthwhile considering them separately. Management is, essentially, of course, the process of keeping an organization working. in a setting like Centerville. This involves tasks like writing up meeting agendas and minutes, entering textual and numerical data, and so forth. Again, because I knew that I was probably at an advantage over my sector mates in terms of ability to focus on sector work, I made a point throughout the semester of assuming many of these managerial tasks, especially those involving writing and reporting. We've spoken a good deal about definitions of leadership over the course of this semester in this class, but any of them, quite clearly, go beyond and even exist outside of management. For our purposes, let's assume Nordhaus's definition of leadership as a process of influencing others for the achievement of a goal. One example of my leadership within Centerville would involve my success in focusing on a vision of mutual benefit with reference to maximal performance indicators across sectors. My selling of this vision to my sector, my continual revisiting this vision in the ongoing decision-making process, justifying decisions with reference to this vision, and then doing the same thing at the city council level. Though I recognize that other circumstantial considerations may have been involved, I credit, at least in part, having led in this way for the fact that every recommendation I made to City Council during my periods there was unanimously agreed to. Okay, number 3, establishment of meeting conventions. Arranging our first sector meetings was something of a challenge for the Economic Development Board, since we were initially entirely unable, as I say, to contact one of our members. Once we did hold our first meeting, we agreed to strive for unanimity in our decisions, to meet weekly at the same set time and place, to each check the sector discussion board at least daily, and to always respond promptly to any questions posed on that discussion board. After a few weeks of the one member's remaining absent, we retained that aim of unanimity, but made the decision also that unanimity among a quorum, so that's to say a simple majority of the whole, 3 of 4, would be sufficient for any decision to be made. Luckily, among those 3 of us, we achieved unanimity on everything, and quite easily. Number 4, data. Okay, it'll come as no surprise to anyone who has worked within the Centerville simulation that pretty much every single decision we made was data-driven. From consideration of the periodic scenarios to that of the performance indicators that resulted, at least in part from previous decisions, to, as time passed, our experience of how the simulation's algorithm seemed to work. This, of course, isn't to say that individuals, or full sectors for that matter, didn't interpret data differently, but by the very nature of the activity, it was always the starting point. Number 5, communication. Now, communication, as I've indicated, was a bit more of an issue for, or rather was a bit of an issue for the Economic Development Board in the early part of the semester. Not only am I, that is, do I live in China with a very big time zone difference, no easy telephone availability, internet connectivity issues, but one of our sector members was completely, as I say, incommunicado for the first several weeks. Again, likely due in part to my being free to focus on such things. I was able to take a lead through simple diligence and set up early meetings using Collaborate between the 3 active members, and from there we were largely okay. Number 6, technology. Now, what I take the question of whether technology helped or hindered me in Centerville leadership to mean is, did I feel somehow more or less empowered to lead by virtue of communication, as opposed to that leadership taking place face-to-face? Now, on this, I'm inclined to say that I didn't really feel much difference, though, of course, on those occasions where technology, such as, for instance, my internet connectivity from China, wasn't up to the expectations of the activity design, Sure, I found it frustrating, and would have loved for that moment to have been in the same room as the others in my sector. Beyond that, the most significant implication of technology for me was the way in which it allowed for the process, of course, to be simulated. And then, in turn, the way that it's being simulated necessarily lowered stakes of our decisions. This, I'm sure, made leading easier, at least for me. Whether or not it made it more effective, I can't really say. And lastly, number 7, the last of the points involves what I've learned through this experience about my own leadership style. Well, I think this business to do with what lower stakes allowed was potentially the most instructive part of the process for me. I realized that I approached this process largely as a game. Did my best, and then lost no sleep, and everything went well. That's a worthwhile lesson in itself. Often, in my professional life, I can become quite emotionally committed into my work, and often have to remind myself to keep stakes in perspective. Now, a flip side of that, which this activity served as quite a good example of, is that I can be quite effective without being emotionally committed. Again, I don't know if this lack of commitment has made me more effective, but it has certainly made leading that much easier. Thanks for your attention, and happy holidays to all. Bye.